Good morning, everybody, to all our participants to our wonderful marathon for the benefit of the world. Reading Sri Caitanya Caritamrita, the wonderful Caitanya Caritamrita describes the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. It happened 500 years ago, and it's still going on. The pastimes of God are eternal. They never stop. They're always going on. They may have stopped here, but they keep going on in different places. The people that are following this and practicing this, they're the associates of Lord Chaitanya. We already did a run today. We're going to go into the second part of our run today, starting at the 10th chapter. The return of Lord Chaitanya to Jagannath Puri. He went on pilgrimage to southern India, and he met with Vaishnavas and devotees and non-devotees. But everyone that saw him and came to him became a devotee, and they got love of God immediately. This is the main feature of Lord Chaitanya that makes him different from other incarnations of God. Usually he establishes principles of religion, but in this manifestation he just brought pure love of God. He came here and he did establish reestablish the disciplic succession. It comes from not just Lord Chaitanya, but Krishna himself, God himself. And we're very lucky in this way. Reading Caitanya Caritamrita without commentary so that we can see the whole picture. We're trying to become full. Full immersion means reading the commentaries of Srila Prabhupada. Okay, let's continue now. Our marathon, our run. We're gonna chant mantras.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Джай Гурудев. 118 стих 10 главы Мадхя лилы. Предыдущий стих, чтобы вписаться. Итак, здесь мы знакомимся со Сварупой Дамодарой, да?
We're starting at the verse 118. We're learning about Sri Swarup Damodar. Starting at 116. Swarup Damodar was an expert musician as the Gandharvas, and in scriptural discussion he was just like Brihaspati, the priest of the heavenly gods. Therefore, it is to be concluded that there was no greater personality like Swarup Damodar. Sri Swarup Damodar was very dear to Advaita Acharya and Nityananda Prabhu, and he was the life and soul of all the devotees headed by Srivas Thakur. When Swarup Damodar came to Jagannath Puri, he fell flat before the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, offering him obeisances and reciting a verse. Ocean of mercy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, let there be an awakening of your auspicious mercy which easily drives away all kinds of material limitation by making everyone pure and blissful. Indeed, your mercy awakens the transcendental bliss and covers all material pleasures. By your auspicious mercy, quarrels and disagreements arising from different scriptures are vanquished. Your auspicious mercy pours forth transcendental mellows, and thus causes the heart to jubilate. Your mercy, which is full of joy, always stimulates devotional service and glorifies conjugal love of God. May transcendental bliss be awakened within my heart by your causeless mercy. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu raised Swarup Damodar to his feet and embraced him. They both became ecstatic in love and fell unconscious. After they had regained their patience, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to speak. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I saw in the dream that you were coming, and so this is very auspicious. I have been like a blind man, but your coming here restores my vision. Swarup Damodar said, My dear Lord, please excuse my offense. I gave up your company to go elsewhere, and that was my great mistake. My dear Lord, if I do not possess even a trace of love of your lotus feet, if I do, how could I have gone to another country? I am therefore a most sinful man. I gave up your company, but you did not give me up. By your rope of mercy, you have bound me by the neck and brought me back again to your lotus feet. Swarup Damodar then worshipped the lotus feet of Nityananda Prabhu, and Nityananda Prabhu in turn embraced him in the ecstasy of love. After worshipping Nityananda Prabhu, Swarup Damodar met Jagannananda, Mukunda, Shankara, and Sarvabhauma as was befitting. Swarup Damodar offered his worshipable prayers at the lotus feet of Paramananda Puri, who in return embraced him in ecstatic love. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then gave Swarup Damodar residence in a solitary place and ordered a servant to serve him with a supply of water and other necessities. The next day, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sat with all the devotees headed by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and they discussed the pastimes of Krishna. At that time, Govinda appeared on the scene, offered his respectful obeisances, and spoke submissively. I am the servant of Ishvarapuri. My name is Govinda, and following the orders of my spiritual master, I have come here. Just before his departure from this mortal world to attain the highest perfection, Ishvarapuri told me that I should go to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and render service unto him. Kashishvara will also come here after visiting all the holy places. However, following the orders of my spiritual master, I have hastily come to be present at your lotus feet. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, My spiritual master Ishvarapuri always favors me with paternal affection. Therefore, out of his causeless mercy he has sent you here. After hearing this, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya asked Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Why did Ishvarapuri keep a servant who comes from a Shudra family? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and my spiritual master Ishvarapuri are completely independent. Therefore, neither the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead nor that of Ishvarapuri is subject to any rules and regulations. The mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not restricted to the jurisdiction of caste and creed. Vidura was a Shudra, yet Krishna accepted lunch at his home. Lord Krishna's mercy is dependent only on affection. Being obliged only by affection, Lord Krishna acts very independently. In conclusion, dealings in affection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead bring happiness many millions of times greater than dealings with Him in awe and veneration. Simply by hearing the holy name of the Lord, the devotee is merged in transcendental bliss. After saying this, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu embraced Govinda, and Govinda in turn offered his respectful obeisances onto Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's lotus feet. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu then continued speaking to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Consider this point. The servant of the spiritual master is always respectable for me. As such, it is not befitting that the Guru's servant should engage in my personal service. Yet my spiritual master has given this order. What shall I do? Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, the order of the spiritual master is very strong and cannot be disobeyed. That is the injunction of the Shastras and revealed scriptures. Being ordered by his father, Parashuram killed his mother, Renuka, just as if she were an enemy. When Lakshmana, the younger brother of Lord Ramachandra, heard this, he immediately engaged himself in the service of his elder brother and accepted his orders. The order of the spiritual master must be obeyed without consideration. The order of a great personality, like a father, must be executed without consideration, because there is good fortune in such order for both of us. In particular, there is good fortune for me. After Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said this, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu embraced Govinda and engaged him in the service of his personal body. Everyone respected Govinda as the dearest servant of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and Govinda served all the Vaishnavas and saw to their needs. Both Haridas Sr. and Haridas Jr., who were musicians as well as Ramai and Nadai, used to stay with Govinda. They all remained with Govinda to serve Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Therefore, no one could estimate the good fortune of Govinda. The next day, Mukunda Datta informed Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, Brahmananda Bharati has come to see you. Mukunda Datta then asked the Lord, shall I bring him here? Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu said, Brahmananda Bharati is like my spiritual master. It is better that I go to him. After saying this, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees came into the presence of Brahmananda Bharati. When Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees approached him, they saw that he was covered with a deerskin. Seeing this, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu became very unhappy. Seeing Brahmananda Bharati wearing the deerskin, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu pretended not to see him. Instead, he asked Mukunda Datta, where is Brahmananda Bharati, my spiritual master? Mukunda Datta replied, here is Brahmananda Bharati, in your presence. The Lord replied, you are innocent. This is not Brahmananda Bharati. You must be talking of someone else, for this is surely not Brahmananda Bharati. You simply have no knowledge. Why should Brahmananda Bharati wear a deerskin? When Brahmananda Bharati heard this, he thought, my deerskin is not approved by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Thus admitting his mistake, Brahmananda Bharati thought, he spoke well. I put on this deerskin only for prestige. I cannot cross over the ocean of nations simply by wearing a deerskin. From today on I shall not wear this deerskin. As soon as Brahmananda Bharati decided this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, understanding his mind, immediately sent for the robes of a sannyasi. As soon as Brahmananda Bharati gave up his deerskin and covered himself with sannyas robes, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came and offered his respects at his lotus feet. Brahmananda Bharati said, you instruct the general populace by your behavior. I will not do anything against your wishes. Otherwise, you will not offer me respects, but will neglect me. I am afraid of this. At the present moment, I see two Brahmanas. One Brahmana is Lord Jagannath, who does not move, and the other, I see two Brahmans. One Brahman is Lord Jagannath who does not move, and the other Brahman who is moving is you. Lord Jagannath is the Archa Vigraha, the worshipable deity, and it is he who is the non-moving Brahman. But you are Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and you are moving here and there. The two of you are the same Brahman, master of the material nature, but you are playing two parts, one moving and one non-moving. In this way, two Brahmans are now residing in Jagannath Puri, Purushottama. Of the two Brahmans, you are fair complexioned, and the other Lord Jagannath is blackish. Both of you are delivering the whole world. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, actually, to tell you the truth, due to your presence, there are now two Brahmans at Jagannath Puri. Both Brahmananda and Gaurahari are moving, whereas the blackish Lord Jagannath is sitting tight and immobile. Brahmananda Bharati said, my dear Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, please become the mediator of this logical argument between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and me. Brahmananda Bharati continued, the living entity is localized, whereas the Supreme Brahman is all-pervading. That is the verdict of the revealed scriptures. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu purified me by taking away my deerskin. This is proof that he is all-pervasive and all-powerful, and that I am subordinate to him. His bodily hue is golden, and his whole body is like molten gold. Every part of his body is very beautifully constructed and smeared with sandalwood pulp. Accepting the renounced order, the Lord is always equipoised. He is firmly fixed in his mission of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, and he is firmly situated in his dualistic conclusion and his peace. All the symptoms mentioned in the verse from the Vishnu Sahasranam Stotra are visible in the body of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. His arms are decorated with sandalwood pulp and the thread received from Sri Jagannath deity, and these are his ornamental bangles. After hearing this, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya rendered his judgment, saying, Brahmananda Bharati, I see that you are victorious. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately said, I accept whatever Brahmananda Bharati has said. It is quite all right with me. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu thus posed himself as a disciple and accepted Brahmananda Bharati as his spiritual master. He then said, the disciple is certainly defeated in an argument with the spiritual master. Brahmananda Bharati immediately countered these words, saying, this is not the cause of your defeat. There is another cause. It is your natural characteristic to accept defeat at the hands of your devotee. There is also another glory of yours, which I ask you to hear attentively. I have been meditating on the impersonal Brahman since my birth, but since I have seen you, I have fully experienced Krishna. Brahmananda Bharati continued, since I have seen you, I have been feeling Lord Krishna's presence in my mind, and I have been seeing him before my eyes. I now want to chant the holy name of the Lord Krishna. Over and above this, within my heart I consider you to be Krishna, and I am therefore very eager to serve you. Bilvamangala Thakur abandoned his impersonal realization for the realization of the personality of Godhead. I now see that my condition is similar to this, for it has already changed. Brahmananda Bharati concluded, although I was worshipped by those on the path of monism and initiated into self-realization through the yoga system, I have nonetheless been forcibly turned into a maidservant by some cunning boy, who was always joking with the gopis. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, you have a deep ecstatic love for Krishna. Therefore, wherever you turn your eyes, you simply heighten your Krishna consciousness. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, the statements of both of you are correct. Krishna gives direct audience through his mercy. Without having ecstatic love for Krishna, one cannot see him directly. Therefore, through the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Brahmananda Bharati has acquired direct vision of the Lord. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, what are you saying? Lord Vishnu, save me. Such glorification is simply another form of blasphemy. After saying this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took Brahmananda Bharati with him to his residence. From that time on, Brahmananda Bharati remained with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Later, Ramabhadra Acharya and Bhagavan Acharya joined them, and giving up all other responsibilities remained under Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's shelter. The next day, Kashirav Goswami also came to and remained with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who received him with great respect. Kashishvara used to usher Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu into the Jagannath temple. He would precede the Lord into the crowd and keep the people from touching him. As all the rivers flow into the sea, all the devotees throughout the country finally came to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's shelter. Since all the devotees came to him for shelter, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed them all mercy and kept them under his protection. Thus I have described the meeting of all the Vaishnavas with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Whoever hears this description ultimately attains shelter at his lotus feet. Praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishnadas, narrate Sri Caitanya Caritamrita, following in their footsteps. Thus in chapter 10, the Lord's return to Jagannath Puri. Chapter 11, the Beta Kirtan pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Short summary. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur summarizes the 11th chapter of his Amrita Pravaha Bhasya. When Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya tried his best to arrange a meeting between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and King Prataparudra, the Lord flatly denied his request. At this time, Sri Ramananda Roy returned from his governmental post, and he praised King Prataparudra highly in Lord Chaitanya's presence. Because of this, the Lord became a little soft. The king also made promises to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who hinted how the king might meet the Lord. During Anavarsara, while Lord Jagannath was resting for 15 days, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, being unable to see Lord Jagannath, went to Alalanath. Later, when the devotees from Bengal came to see him, he returned to Jagannath Puri. While Advaita Acharya and other devotees were coming to Jagannath Puri, Sarup Damodar and Govinda, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's two personal assistants, went to receive all the devotees with garlands. From the roof of his palace, King Prataparudra could see all the devotees arriving. Gopinath Acharya stood on the roof with the king, and following Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's instructions, identified each and every devotee. The king discussed the devotees with Gopinath Acharya, and he mentioned that the devotees were accepting prasadam without observing the regulative principles governing pilgrimages. They accepted prasadam without having shaved, and they neglected to fast in a holy place. After Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had explained to the king why the devotees had apparently violated the scriptural injunctions for visiting a place of pilgrimage, the king arranged residential quarters for all the devotees and saw to their prasadam. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu talked very happily with Vasudev Datta and other devotees. Haridas Thakur also came, and due to his humble and submissive attitude, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave him a nice solitary place near the temple. After this, the Lord began performing Sankirtan, dividing all the devotees into 4 groups. After Sankirtan, all the devotees left for their residential quarters. Verse 1, chapter 11 of the the Beda Kirtan pastimes of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu merged the entire world into the ocean of ecstatic love by performing his beautiful dances within the temple of Jagannath. He danced exquisitely and jumped high. All glories to Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All glories to Lord Nityananda Prabhu. All glories to Sri Advaita Prabhu, and all glories to all the devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The next day, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya requested Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to give him permission to submit a settlement statement without fear. The Lord gave the Bhattacharya assurance that he could speak without fear, but added that if his statement were suitable, he would accept it, and if not, he would reject it. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, "There is a king named Prataparudra Roy. He is very anxious to meet you, and he wants your permission." As soon as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard this proposal, he immediately covered his ears with his hands and said, "My dear Sarvabhauma, why are you requesting such an undesirable thing from me? Since I am in the renounced order, it is as dangerous for me to meet a king as to meet a woman. To meet either would be just like drinking poison." Greatly lamenting, the Lord then informed Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, "Alas, for a person who is seriously desiring to cross the material ocean and engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord without material motives, seeing a materialist engaged in sense gratification, or seeing a woman who is simply interested in more abominable is more abominable than drinking poison willingly." Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya replied, "My dear Lord, what you have said is correct, but this king is not an ordinary king. He is a great devotee and servant of Lord Jagannath." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "Although it is correct that the king is a great devotee, he is still to be considered a venomous snake. Similarly, even though a woman be made of wood, one becomes agitated simply by touching her form. Just as one is immediately frightened upon seeing a live serpent or even the form of a serpent, one endeavoring for self-realization should similarly fear a materialistic person and a woman. Indeed, he should not even glance at their bodily features." Bhattacharya, if you continue to speak like this, you will never see me here again. Therefore, you should never let such a request come from your mouth. Being afraid, Sarvabhauma returned home and began to meditate on the matter. At this time, Maharaj Prataparudra arrived at Jagannath Puri, Purushottama, and accompanied by his secretaries, ministers, and military officers, went to visit the temple of Lord Jagannath. When King Prataparudra returned to Jagannath Puri, Ramananda Roy came with him. Ramananda Roy immediately went to meet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with great pleasure. Upon meeting Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ramananda Roy offered his obeisances. The Lord embraced him, and both of them began to cry in the great ecstasy of love. Seeing Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's intimate dealings with Sri Ramananda Roy, all the devotees were astonished. Ramananda Roy said, "I duly informed King Prataparudra of your order for me to retire from service. By your grace, the king was pleased to relieve me of these material activities. I said, Your Majesty, I am now not willing to engage in political activities. I desire only to stay at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Kindly give me permission." When I submitted this proposal, the king immediately became very pleased upon hearing your name. Indeed, he instantly rose from his throne and embraced me. "My dear Lord, As soon as the king heard your holy name, he was immediately overwhelmed by great ecstatic love. Catching my hand, he displayed all the symptoms of love. As soon as he heard my petition, he immediately granted me a pension without reductions. Thus the king granted me a full salary as a pension and requested me to engage without anxiety in the service of your lotus feet. Then Maharaj Prataparudra very humbly said, I am most fallen and abominable, and I am unfit to receive an interview with the Lord. One's life is successful if one engages in his service. The king then said, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna, the son of Maharaj Nanda. He is very merciful, and I hope that in a future birth he will allow me an interview. My lord, I do not think that there is even a fraction of Maharaj Prataparudra's loving ecstasy in me. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then said, My dear Ramananda Roy, you are the foremost of all the devotees of Krishna. Therefore, whoever loves you is certainly a fortunate person. Because the king has shown so much love for you, Lord Krishna will certainly accept him. Lord Krishna told Arjuna, those who are my direct devotees are actually not my devotees, but those who are the devotees of my servant are my factual devotees. My devotees take great care and respect in rendering me service. They offer obeisances to me, and with all their bodily limbs they worship other devotees, and find all living entities related to me. For me, they engage the entire energy of their bodies. They engage the power of speech in the glorification of my qualities and form. They also dedicate their minds unto me and try to give up all kinds of material desires. Thus my devotees are characterized. Lord Shiva told the goddess Durga, My dear Devi, although the Vedas recommend worship of demigods, the worship of Lord Vishnu is topmost. However, above the worship of Lord Vishnu is the rendering of service to Vaishnavas, who are related to Lord Vishnu. Those whose austerity is meager can hardly obtain the service of the pure devotees progressing on the path back to the kingdom of Godhead, the Vaikunthas. Pure devotees engage 100% in glorifying the Supreme Lord, who is the Lord of the demigods and the controller of all living entities. Paramananda Puri, Brahmananda Bharati Gosai, Swarup Damodar Gosai, Lord Nityananda, Jagadananda, Mukunda, and others were present before the Lord at that time. Sri Ramananda Roy therefore offered his obeisances to all the Lord's devotees, in particular to the four spiritual masters. Thus Ramananda Roy suitably met all the devotees. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu next asked Ramananda Roy, Have you already visited the temple of the lotus-eyed Lord Jagannath? Ramananda Roy replied, I shall now go visit the temple. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, What have you done, my dear Roy? Why did you not first see Lord Jagannath and then come here? Why have you come here first? Ramananda Roy said, The legs are like the chariot, and the heart is the charioteer. Wherever the heart takes the living entity, the living entity is obliged to go. Sri Ramananda Roy continued, What shall I do? My mind has brought me here. I could not consider going first to Lord Jagannath's temple. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised, Immediately go to Lord Jagannath's temple to see the Lord, then go home and meet your family members. Having received Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's permission, Ramananda Roy hastily went to the temple of Lord Jagannath, who can understand the devotional service of Ramananda Roy. When King Prataparudra returned to Jagannath Puri, he called for Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. When the Bhattacharya went to see the king offered him respects and made the following inquiries. The king asked, Have you submitted my petition to the Lord? Sarvabhauma replied, Yes, With much endeavor, I have tried my best. Yet, despite my great endeavor, the Lord would not agree to see a king. Indeed, he said, if he were to ask again, he would quit Jagannath Puri and go elsewhere. Hearing this, the king became very unhappy, and greatly lamenting began to speak as follows. The king said, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu has descended just to deliver all kinds of sinful, low-born persons. Consequently, he has delivered sinners like Jagai and Madhya. Alas, has Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu incarnated to deliver all kinds of sinners, with the exception of a king named Maharaj Prataparudra? Alas, has Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made his advent deciding that he will deliver all others with the exception of men? He bestows his merciful glance upon many low-caste men who are usually not even to be seen. Maharaj Prataparudra continued, if Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is determined not to see me, then I am determined not to give up my life if I do not see him. If I do not receive Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy, my body and my kingdom are certainly useless. Hearing King Prataparudra's determination, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya became thoughtful. Indeed, he was very much astonished to see the king's determination. Finally, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, my dear king, do not worry. Because of your firm determination, I am sure that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy will definitely be bestowed upon you. As soon as the Bhattacharya saw the king's firm determination, he declared, the Supreme Lord is approached only by pure love. Your love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very, very deep. Therefore, without a doubt, he will be merciful upon you. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya then suggested, there is one means by which you can directly see him. On the day of the cart festival, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will dance before the deity in great ecstatic love. On that Ratha Yatra festival day, after dancing before the Lord, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will enter the Gondichet garden. At that time, you should go there alone, without your royal dress. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu enters the Gondichet garden, you should also go there and read the 5 chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam about Lord Krishna's dancing with the gopis. In this way, you can catch hold of the Lord's lotus feet. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will be in a mood of ecstatic love, without external consciousness. At that time, as you recite those chapters from Srimad Bhagavatam, he will embrace you, knowing you to be a pure Vaishnava. The Lord has already changed his mind due to Ramananda Roy's description of your pure love for him. Maharaj Prataparudra took the Bhattacharya's advice and firmly decided to follow his instructions. Thus he felt transcendental happiness. When the king asked the Bhattacharya when the bathing ceremony Sanan Yatra of the Lord Jagannath would take place, the Bhattacharya replied that there were only 3 days left before the ceremony. After thus encouraging King Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya returned home. On the day of Lord Jagannath's bathing ceremony, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very happy at heart. Upon seeing the bathing ceremony of Lord Jagannath, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became very happy. But when Lord Jagannath retired after the ceremony, Lord Chaitanya became very unhappy because he could not see him. Due to separation from Lord Jagannath, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu felt the same great anxiety the gopis feel in separation from Krishna. In this condition, he gave up all association and went to Alalanath. The devotees who had followed the Lord came into his presence and requested him to return to Puri. They submitted that the devotees from Bengal were coming to Purushottama Kshetra. In this way, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya brought Lord Chaitanya back to Jagannath Puri. He then went to King Prataparudra and informed him of the Lord's arrival. At this time, Gopinathacharya came there while Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was with King Prataparudra. Being a Brahmana, he offered his benediction to the king and addressed Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya as follows. About 200 devotees are coming from Bengal. All of them are greatly advanced and specifically devoted to Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. All of them have already arrived on the bank of Lake Narendra and are waiting there. I desired residential quarters and prasadam arrangements for them. The king replied, I shall give orders to the attendant of the temple. He will arrange for everyone's residential quarters and prasadam as you desire. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, please show me one after another all of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's devotees who are coming from Bengal. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya requested the king, go up on the roof of the palace. Gopinathacharya knows every one of the devotees. He will identify them for you. Actually, I do not know any of them, although I have a desire to know them. Since Gopinath Acharya knows them all, he will give you their names. After Sarvabhauma said this, he went up to the top of the palace with the king and Gopinath Acharya. At this time, all Vaishnava devotees from Bengal drew closer to the palace. Swarup Damodar and Govinda, taking the flower garlands and prasadam of Lord Jagannath, proceeded to where all the Vaishnavas were standing. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first sent those two persons in advance. The king inquired, who are these two? Please let me know their identities. Sri Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya replied, here is Swarup Damodar, who is practically the second expansion of the body of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The second person is Govinda, Lord Chaitanya's personal servant. The Lord has sent garlands and remnants of Lord Jagannath's food with these two persons, simply to honor the devotees from Bengal. At the beginning, Swarup Damodar came forward and garlanded Advaita Acharya. Govinda next came and offered a second garland to Advaita Acharya. When Govinda offered his obeisances by falling down flat before Advaita Acharya asked Swarup Damodar about his identity, for he did not know Govinda at the time. Swarup Damodar informed him, Govinda was the servant of Ishvarapuri. He is very highly qualified. Ishvarapuri ordered Govinda to serve Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Thus the Lord keeps him by his side. The king inquired, to whom did Swarup Damodar and Govinda offer the two garlands? His bodily effulgence is so great that he must be a very great devotee. Please let me know who he is. Gopinath Acharya replied, his name is Advaita Acharya. He is honored even by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he is a devotee, and he therefore is the topmost devotee. Here are Srivas Pandit, Vakreshvara Pandit, Vidyanidhi Acharya, and Gadadhar Pandit. Here are Acharya Artna, Paundra Pandit, Gangadas Pandit, and Shankara Pandit. Here are Murari Gupta, Pandit Narayana, and Haridas Thakur, the deliverer of the whole universe. Here is Haribhata, and there is Narasimhananda. Here are Vasudev Datta and Shivananda Sen. Here also are Govinda Ghosh, Madhava Ghosh, and Vasudev Ghosh. They are three brothers, and their Sankirtan, congregational chanting, pleases the Lord very much. Here is Raghava Pandit, here is Acharya Nandana, there is Sriman Pandit, and here are Srikanta and Narayana. Gopinath Acharya continued to point out the devotees. Here is Shukalambar, see there is Sridhar, here is Vijay, and there is Vallabhasen. Here is Purushottama, and there is Sanjay. And here are all the residents of Kulinagram, such as Satyaraj Khan, and Ramananda. Indeed, all of them are present here. Please see. Here are Mukunda Das, Narahari, Sri Raghunandana, Chirangiva, and Salochina, and the residents of Kunda. How many names shall I speak to you? All the devotees you see here are associates of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, who is their life and soul. The king said, upon seeing all these devotees, I am very much astonished, for I have never seen such an effulgence. Indeed, their effulgence is like the brilliance of 1,000,000 suns, nor have I ever heard the Lord's names chanted so melodiously. I have never before seen such ecstatic love, nor heard the vibration of the holy name of the Lord chanted in such a way, nor seen such dancing during Sankirtan. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya replied, this sweet transcendental sound is a special creation of the Lord, known as Prem Sankirtan, congregational chanting in love of Godhead. In this age of Kali, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has descended to preach the religion of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, the chanting of the holy names of the Lord Krishna is the religious principle of this age. Anyone who worships Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by congregational chanting should be understood to be very intelligent. One who does not do so must be considered a victim of this age and bereft of all intelligence. In this age of Kali, intelligent persons perform congregational chanting to worship the incarnation of Godhead, who constantly sings the name of Krishna. Although his complexion is not blackish, he is Krishna himself. He is accompanied by his associates, servants, weapons, and confidential companions. The king said, according to evidence given in the revealed scriptures, it is concluded that the Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Lord Krishna himself. Why then are learned scholars sometimes indifferent to him? The Bhattacharya replied, a person who has received but a small fraction of mercy from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can understand that he is Lord Krishna. No one else can. If the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not bestowed upon a person, regardless of how learned the scholar that person may be, and regardless of his seeing or listening, he cannot accept Lord Chaitanya as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Brahma said, my Lord, if one is favored even by a slight trace of your mercy of your lotus feet, he can understand the greatness of your personality. But those who speculate to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead are unable to know you, even though they continue to study the Vedas for many years. The king said, instead of visiting the temple of Jagannath, all the devotees are running toward the residence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya replied, this is spontaneous love. All the devotees are very anxious to meet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. First the devotees will meet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then take him with them to the temple to see Lord Jagannath. The king said, the son of Bhavananda Roy, named Vanhinath, along with 5 or 7 other men, went to obtain the remnants of Lord Jagannath's food. Indeed, Vaninath has already gone to the residence of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and has taken a huge quantity of Mahaprasadam. Please let me know the reason for this. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, understanding that all the devotees have come, Lord Chaitanya gave the sign, and therefore Vaninath and the others have brought such great quantities of Mahaprasadam. The king then asked the Bhattacharya, why have the devotees not observed the regulations for visiting the pilgrimage place, such as fasting, shaving, and so on? Why have they first eaten prasadam? The Bhattacharya told the king, what you have said is right. According to the regulative principles governing the visiting of holy places, there is another path, which is the path of spontaneous love. According to those principles, there are subtle intricacies involved in the execution of religious principles. The scriptural injunctions for shaving and fasting are indirect orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. However, when there is a direct order from the Lord to take prasadam, naturally the devotees take prasadam as their first duty. When Mahaprasadam is not available, there must be fasting, but when the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly orders one to take prasadam, neglecting such an opportunity is offensive. When Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu is distributing prasadam with his transcendental hand, who will neglect such an opportunity and accept the regulative principles of fasting? Previously, the Lord gave me Mahaprasadam rice. One morning, I ate it, and just sitting on my bed without having even washed my mouth. The man to whom the Lord shows his mercy by inspiring him within his heart takes shelter only of Lord Krishna and abandons all Vedic social customs. When one is inspired by the Lord, who is sitting in everyone's heart, he does not care for social customs or Vedic regulative principles. After this, King Prachaparudra came down from the top of his palace to the ground and called for Kashi Mishra and the inspector of the temple. King Prachaparudra then told both Kashi Mishra and the temple inspector, "Provide all the devotees and associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with comfortable residences, convenient eating facilities for prasadam, and convenient visiting arrangements at the temple so that there will not be any difficulty." The orders of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu must be carefully carried out. Although the Lord may not give direct orders, you are still to carry out his desires simply by understanding his indications. Saying this, the king gave them permission to leave. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya went to see the assembly of all the Vaishnavas. From a distant place, Gopinath Acharya and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya watched the meeting of all the Vaishnavas with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Beginning from the right side of the lion gate, or the main gate of the temple, all the Vaishnavas began to proceed toward the house of Kashi Mishra. In the meantime, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, accompanied by his personal associates, met all the Vaishnavas on the road with great jubilation. First, Advaita Acharya offered prayers to the lotus feet of the Lord, and the Lord immediately embraced him in ecstatic love. Indeed, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Advaita Acharya displayed agitation due to ecstatic love. Seeing the time and circumstances, however, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu remained patient. After this, all the devotees, headed by Srivas Thakur, offered prayers to the lotus feet of the Lord, and the Lord embraced him.
Если Гаура Хари, Господь Шри Чайтанья Махапрабху, не смилостивится надо мной, я брошу свое царство и стану жить как нищий.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I can understand that all desire to take me to Kataka to see the king. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, what to speak of spiritual advancement, all the people will blaspheme me, and what to speak of all the people, Damodar would chastise me. I shall not meet the king at the request of all the devotees, but I shall do so if Damodar will give his permissions. Damodar immediately replied, My Lord, you are the fully independent Supreme Personality of Godhead. Since everything is known to you, you know what is permissible and what is not permissible. I am merely an insignificant jiva, so what power do I have to give directions to you? By your own personal choice, will you meet with the king? I shall see it. The king is very much attached to you, and you are feeling affection and love toward him. Thus I can understand that by virtue of the king's affection for you, you will touch him. Although you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead and are completely independent, still you are dependent on the love and affection of your devotees. That is your nature. Nityananda Prabhu then said, Who is there in the three worlds who can ask you to see the king? Still, isn't it the nature of an attached man to give up his life if he does not attain the desired object? For instance, some of the wives of the Brahmanas who were performing sacrifices give up their lives in the presence of their husbands for the sake of Krishna. Nityananda Prabhu then submitted one suggestion for the Lord's consideration. There is a way, he suggested, by which you need not meet the king, but which would enable the king to continue living. If you, out of your mercy, send one of your outer garments to the king would live hoping to see you in some time in the future. The Lord said, Since you are all very learned personalities, whatever you decide I shall accept. Lord Nityananda Prabhu then obtained an external garment used by the Lord by requesting it from Govinda. Thus Nityananda Prabhu delivered the old cloth into the care of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya sent it to the king. When the king received an old cloth, he began to worship it exactly as he would worship the Lord personally. After returning from his service in the South India, Ramananda Roy requested the king to allow him to remain with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Ramananda Roy requested the king to allow him to stay with the Lord, the king immediately gave him permission with great satisfaction. As for the king himself, he began to solicit Ramananda Roy to make a meeting arrangement. The king told Ramananda Roy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very, very merciful to you. Therefore, please solicit my meeting with him without fail. The king and Ramananda Roy returned together to Jagannath Kshetra, and Sri Ramananda Roy met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. At that time, Ramananda Roy informed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about the ecstatic love of the king. Indeed, as soon as there was some opportunity, he repeatedly informed the Lord about the king. Sri Ramananda Roy was indeed a diplomatic minister for the king. His general behavior was very expert, and simply by describing the king's love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gradually softened the Lord's mind. Maharaj Prachaparuja in great anxiety could not endure seeing the Lord. Therefore Ramananda Roy by his diplomacy arranged a meeting with the Lord for the king. Sri Ramananda Roy frankly requested Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, please show your lotus feet to the king at least once. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, My dear Ramananda Roy, you should make this request after duly considering whether it is befitting for a sannyas to meet a king. If a mendicant meets a king, this world and the next world are both destroyed for the mendicant. Indeed, what is there to say of the next world? In this world, people will joke if a sannyasi meets a king.
Я готов согласиться с любым
Ramananda Roy replied, "My Lord, you are the supreme independent personality. You have nothing to fear from anyone because you are not dependent on anyone." When Ramananda Roy addressed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu objected, saying, "I am not the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but an ordinary human being. Therefore, I must fear public opinion in three ways, with my body, mind, and words."
Вернувшись со службы в Южную Индию, Рамананда Рай
As soon as the general public finds a little fault in the behavior of a sannyasi, they advertise it like a wildfire. A black spot of ink cannot be hidden on a white cloth. It is always very prominent. Ramananda Roy replied, "My dear Lord, you have delivered so many sinful people. This king Prataparuja and the king of Orissa is actually a servitor of the Lord and your devotee." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then said, "There may be much milk in a big pot, but if it is contaminated by a drop of liquor, it is untouchable." The king certainly possesses all good qualities, but simply by taking upon the name king, he has infected everyone. Everything. But if you are still very eager for the king to meet me, please first bring my son to meet me. It is indicated in the revealed scriptures that the son represents the father. Therefore, the son's meeting with me would be just as good as the king's meeting with me. Ramananda Roy then went to inform the king about his talks with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and following the Lord's orders, he brought the king's son to see him. The prince, just entering upon his youth, was very beautiful. He was blackish in complexion and had large lotus eyes. The prince was dressed in yellow cloth, and there were jeweled ornaments decorating his body. Therefore, anyone who saw him would remember Lord Krishna. Seeing the boy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately remembered Krishna. Meeting the boy in ecstatic love, the Lord began to speak. "Here is a great devotee," Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said. "Upon seeing him, everyone can remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, son of Maharaj Nanda." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, "I have become very much obligated just by seeing this boy." After saying this, the Lord again embraced the prince. As soon as the prince was touched by the Lord, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's symptoms of ecstatic love immediately manifested in his body. These symptoms included perspiration, trembling, tears, being stunned, and jubilation. The boy began to cry and dance, and he chanted, "Krishna, Krishna." Upon seeing his bodily symptoms and his chanting and dancing, all the devotees praised him for his great spiritual fortune. At that time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu claimed the youth and ordered him to come there daily to meet him. Ramananda Roy and the boy then departed from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Ramananda took him back to the king's palace. The king was very happy when he heard of his son's activities. Just by embracing his son, the king was filled with ecstatic love, just as if he had touched Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu directly. From then on, the fortunate prince was one of the most intimate devotees of the Lord. Thus, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu acted in society of his pure devotees, performing his pastimes and spreading the Sankirtan movement. Some of the prominent devotees like Advaita Acharya used to invite Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to take his meals in their homes. The Lord accepted such invitations accompanied by his devotees. In this way, the Lord passed some days in great jubilation. Then the car festival of Lord Jagannath approached. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first of all called for Kashi Mishra, then for the superintendent of the temple, then for Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. When these three people came before the Lord, he begged them for permission to wash the temple known as Gondicha.
Своим видом мальчик сразу же напомнил Шри Чайтанье Махапрабху.
Upon hearing the Lord's request for permission to wash the Gondicha temple, the Padicha, the superintendent of the temple, said, "My dear sir, we are all your servants. Whatever you desire is our duty to perform." The king gave a special order for me to do without delay whatever your lordship orders. My dear Lord, washing the temple is not service befitting you. Nonetheless, if you wish to do so, it is to be accepted as one of your pastimes. To wash the temple, you need many water pots and brooms. Therefore, order me. I can immediately bring all these things to you. As soon as the superintendent understood the desire of the Lord, he immediately delivered 100 new water pots and 100 brooms for sweeping the temple. The next day, early in the morning, the Lord took his personal associates with him, and with his own hands smeared sandalwood pulp on their bodies. He gave each devotee a broom with his own hand, and taking all of them personally with him, the Lord went to Gondicha. In this way, the Lord and his associates went to cleanse the Gondicha temple. At first they cleansed the temple with the brooms. The Lord cleansed everything inside the temple very nicely, including the ceiling. He then took up the sitting place, Simhasana, cleansed it, and again put it in its original place. Thus the Lord and his companions cleansed and swept all the temple's buildings, big and small, and finally cleansed the area between the temple and the kirtan hall. Indeed, hundreds of devotees were engaged in cleansing around the temple. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu was personally carrying out the operation just to instruct others. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu washed and cleansed the temple in great jubilation, chanting the holy name of Lord Krishna all the time. Similarly, all the devotees were also chanting and at the same time performing their respective duties. The entire beautiful body of the Lord was covered with dust and dirt. The entire beautiful body of the Lord was covered with dust and dirt. In this way it became transcendently beautiful. At times, when cleansing the temple, the Lord shed tears, and in some places he even cleansed with those tears. After this, the place where the deity's food was kept, Bhog Mandir, was cleansed. Then the yard was cleansed, and then all the residential quarters, one after another. After Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu collected all the straw, dust, and grains of sand in one place, he gathered it all in his cloth and threw it outside. Following the example of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, all the devotees in great jubilation began to gather straw and dust with their own cloths and throw them outside the temple. The Lord then told the devotees, "I can tell you how much you have labored and how well you have cleansed the temple simply by seeing all the straw and dust you have collected outside." Even though all the devotees collected dirt all in one place, even though all the devotees collected dirt in one pile, the dirt collected by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was much greater. After the inside of the temple was cleansed, the Lord again allotted areas for the devotees to cleanse. The Lord then ordered everyone to cleanse the inside of the temple very perfectly by taking finer dust, straws, and grains of sand and throwing them outside. After Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all the Vaishnavas cleansed the temple for the second time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very happy to see the cleansing and work. After Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all the Vaishnavas cleansed the temples for the second time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very happy to see the cleansing work. While the temple was being swept, about 100 men stood ready and filled water pots, and they simply awaited the Lord's order to throw the water from them. As soon as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu called for water, all the men immediately brought the 100 water pots, which were completely filled, and delivered them before the Lord. In this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first washed the main temple, and then thoroughly washed the ceiling and walls, the floor, the sitting place, simhasana, and everything else within the room. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself and his devotees began to throw water onto the ceiling. When this water fell, it washed the walls and floor. Then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to wash the sitting place of Lord Jagannath with his own hands, and all the devotees began to bring water to the Lord. All the devotees within the temple began to wash. Each one had a broom in his hand, and in this way they cleansed the temple of the Lord. Someone brought the water to pour into the hands of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and someone poured water on his lotus feet. The water that fell from the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was drunk by someone who hid himself. Someone else begged for that water, and another person was giving that water in charity. After the room was washed, the water was let out through an outlet, and it then flowed and filled the yard outside. The Lord mopped the room with his own clothes, and he polished the throne with them also. In this way all the rooms were cleansed with 100 water pots. After the rooms had been cleansed, the minds of the devotees were clean as the rooms. When the temple was cleansed, it was purified, cool, and pleasing, just as if the Lord's own pure mind had appeared. Since hundreds of men were engaged in bringing water from the lake, there was no place to stand on the banks. Consequently, someone began to draw water from a well. Hundreds of devotees brought water in pots, and hundreds took empty pots away and filled them up again. With the exception of Nityananda Prabhu, Advaitacharya, Swarup Damodar, Brahmananda Bharati, and Brahmananda Puri, everyone was engaged in filling the water pots and bringing them there. Many of the water pots were broken when people collided with one another, and hundreds of men had to bring new water pots to fill. Some people were filling the pots, and others were washing the rooms, but everyone was engaged in chanting the holy name of Krishna and Hari. One person begged for a water pot by chanting the holy name Krishna Krishna, and another delivered the pot while chanting Krishna Krishna. Whenever anyone had to speak, he did so by uttering the holy name of Krishna. Consequently, the holy name of Krishna became an indication for everyone who wanted something. As Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was vibrating the holy name,
Кроме Нитянанды Прабhu, Адвайтачарьи, Сварупы Дамодары, Брахмананды Бхарати и Парамананды Пури, все наполняли и носили кувшины. Много кувшинов разбилось от того, что несущие их сталкивались друг с другом.
It appeared as though Mahaprabhu were cleansing and washing with hundreds of hands. He approached every devotee just to teach him how to work. When he saw someone doing nicely, the Lord praised him. But if he saw that someone was not working to his satisfaction, he immediately chastised that person, not bearing any grudge. The Lord would say, "You have done well. Please teach this to others so that they may act in the same way." As soon as they heard Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu say this, everyone became ashamed. Thus the devotees began to work with great attention. They washed the Jagannathana area and then place where food was kept. All places were also washed. In this way, the meeting place was washed, the entire yard, the raised sitting place, the kitchen, and every other room. Thus, all places around the temple were previously washed within and without. After everything was thoroughly washed, a Vaishnav from Bengal, who was very intelligent and simple, came and poured water on the lotus feet of the Lord. The Gaudiya Vaishnav then took that water and drank it himself. Seeing that, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu felt a little. Although the Lord was certainly satisfied with him, he became angry externally in order to establish the etiquette of religious principles. The Lord then called for Swarup Damodar and told him, "Just see the behavior of your Bengali Vaishnavas. This person from Bengal has washed my feet with the temple of the personality of Godhead. Not only that, but he has drunk the water himself. I now do not know what my destination is because of this offense. Indeed, your Bengali Vaishnav has greatly implicated me." At this point, Swarup Damodar Goswami caught the Gaudiya Vaishnav by the neck and, giving him a little push, ejected it from the Gondicha temple and made him stay outside.
Господь подозвал Сварупу Дамодару и сказал ему: «Только посмотри, что сделал твой бенгальский вайшнав. Этот бенгалец в храме Бога омыл мне стопы. Мало того, он еще и выпил эту воду».
After Swarup Damodar Goswami returned with the temple, he requested Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to excuse that innocent person. After seeing this incident, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very satisfied, and then he asked all the devotees to sit down in two lines on both sides. The Lord then personally sat down in the middle and picked up all kinds of straw, grains, and sand and dirty things. While Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was picking up the straws and grains of sand, he said, "I shall gather everyone's collection. I shall ask whoever has collected less and all of the others to pay a fine of sweet cakes and sweet rice." In this way, all the quarters of the Gondicha temple were completely cleansed and cleared. All quarters were cool and spotless, like one's cleansed and pacified mind. When the water from the different rooms was finally let out through the halls, it appeared as if new rivers were rushing out to meet the waters of the ocean. Outside the gateway of the temple, all the roads were also cleansed, and no one could tell exactly how this was done. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also cleansed the Nrsimha temple inside and outside. Finally, he rested a few minutes and began dancing. All around Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all the devotees performed congregational chanting. The Lord, just like a maddened elephant, danced in the middle.
Все преданные, окружившие Чайтанью Махапрабху, вместе пели святые имена, а Господь, как бешеный лев, танцевал в центре. Танцуя,
All around Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all the devotees performed congregational chanting. The Lord, just like a maddened lion, danced in the middle. As usual, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu danced, there were perspiration, trembling, fading, tears, jubilation, and roaring. Indeed, the tears from his eyes washed his body and those before him. In this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu washed the bodies of all the devotees with the tears from his eyes. The tears poured like rains in the mouth of Shravana. The sky was filled with the great and loud chanting of Sankirtan, and the earth shook from the jumping and dancing of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu always liked the loud chanting of Swarup Damodar. Therefore, when Swarup Damodar sang, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu danced and jumped high in jubilation. The Lord thus chanted and danced for some time. Finally, understanding the circumstances, he stopped. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then ordered Sri Gopal, the son of Advaita Acharya, to dance. While dancing in ecstatic love, Sri Gopal fainted and fell to the ground unconscious. When Sri Gopal fainted, Advaita Acharya hastily took him upon his lap. Seeing that he was not breathing, he became very much agitated. Advaita Acharya and others began to chant the holy name of the Lord, Nrsimha, and sprinkle water The roaring of the chant was so great that it seemed to shake the entire universe. When the boy did not regain consciousness after some time, Advaita Acharya and the other devotees began to cry. Then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu placed his hand on the chest of Sri Gopal and said loudly, "Gopal, stand up." As soon as Gopal heard the voice of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he immediately came to his senses. All the devotees then began to dance, chanting the holy name of Hari. This incident has been described in detail by Vrindavan Das Thakur. Therefore, I have described it only in brief. After taking rest, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all the devotees departed to take their baths. After bathing, the Lord stood on the bank of the lake and put on dry garments. After offering obeisances to the Lord Nrsimhadev, whose temple was nearby, the Lord entered a garden. In the garden, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sat down in the garden, after soon bathing, stood on the bank of the lake in the dry garments, after occupations whose temple was nearby. In the garden, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sat down with the other devotees. Vaninath Roy then came and brought all kinds of Mahaprasadam. Kashi Mishra and Tulasi, the superintendent of the temple, brought as much prasadam as 500 men could eat. Seeing the large quantity of prasadam, which consisted of rice cakes, sweet rice, and all varieties of vegetables, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very satisfied. Among the devotees present with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were Pramananda Puri, Brahmananda Bharati, Advaita Acharya, and Nityananda Prabhu. Acharya Nath, Acharya Nidhi, Srivas Thakur, Gadadhar Pandit, Sankara, Nandacharya, Raghava Pandit, and Vakeshwar were also present. Receiving the permission of the Lord, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya sat down. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all his devotees sat on raised wooden seats. In this way, all the devotees sat down to take their lunch in consecutive lines, one beside the other. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was repeatedly calling, "Haridas, Haridas," and at that time Haridas, standing at a distance, spoke as follows. Haridas Thakur said, Let Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu take his lunch with devotees. Since I am abominable, I cannot sit down among you. Govinda will give me prasadam later. Outside the door, understanding his mind, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not call him again. Swarup Damodar Goswami, Jagannananda, Damodar Pandit, Kashishvara, Gopinath, Vaninath, and Sankara distributed prasadam, and devotees chanted the holy names at intervals. The Lord Sri Krishna had previously taken his lunch in the forest, and that very pastime was remembered by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Just by remembering the pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was agitated by ecstatic love. By considering the time and circumstance, he remained somewhat patient. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "You can give me only ordinary vegetables known as lala para vijnana, and you may deliver all the devotees better preparations like cakes, sweet rice, and amrita gutika." Since Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is omniscient, he knew what types of preparations each person liked. He therefore had Swarup Damodar deliver these preparations to each devotee to his full satisfaction. Jagadananda went to distribute prasadam. Then suddenly he placed all the first-class preparations on the plate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When such nice prasadam was put on the plate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Lord was outwardly very angrily. Nonetheless, when the preparations were placed on his plate, sometimes by tricks and sometimes by force, the Lord was satisfied. When the food was thus delivered, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu looked at it for some time. Being afraid of Jagannananda, he finally ate something. The Lord knew that if he did not eat the food offered by Jagannananda, Jagadananda would certainly fast. Being afraid of this, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ate some of the prasadam he offered. Sarup Damodar Goswami then brought some excellent sweetmeats, and standing before the Lord, offered them to him. Sarup Damodar Goswami then said, "Just take a little of this Mahaprasadam and see how it is that Lord Jagannath has accepted it." Upon saying this, Sarup Damodar Goswami placed some of the food before the Lord, and the Lord, out of affection, ate it. Sarup Damodar and Jagadananda again and again offered the Lord some food. Thus they behaved affectionately with the Lord. This was very, very uncommon. The Lord made Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya sit on his left side. When Sarvabhauma saw the behavior of Swarup Damodar and Jagadananda, he smiled. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also wanted to offer Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya first-class food. Therefore, out of affection, he had the servers put first-class food on his plate again and again. Gopinathacharya also brought first-class food and offered it to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya while speaking sweet words. After serving the Bhattacharya with first-class prasadam, Gopinathacharya said, "Just consider what the Bhattacharya's previous mundane behavior was. Just consider how, at the present, he is enjoying transcendental bliss." Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya replied to Gopinathacharya, "I was simply a less intelligent logician, but by your grace I have received this opulence of perfection." But for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya continued, "Who is so merciful? He has converted a crow into the Garuda. Who could be so merciful? In the association of jackals known as logicians, I simply continued to bark a resounding bhoo bhoo. Now, from the same mouth I am chanting the holy names Krishna and Hari. Whereas I once associated with the disciples of logic, all non-devotees, I am now merged in the waves of the nectarian ocean of the association of the devotees." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, "From your previous birth you have been in Krishna consciousness. Thus you love Krishna so much that simply by your association we are all developing Krishna consciousness. Thus there is no one within these three worlds save for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is always so willing to increase the glories of the devotees and give them satisfaction." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then took all the remnants of food offered to Jagannath, such as cakes and sweet rice, and distributed them to all other devotees, calling them individually. Sri Advaita Acharya and Nityananda Prabhu sat side by side, and when prasadam was being distributed, they engaged in a type of mock fighting. First Advaita Acharya said, "I am sitting in line with an unknown mendicant, and because I am eating with him, I do not know what kind of destination is awaiting me." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is in the renounced order of life. Consequently, he does not recognize discrepancies. As a matter of fact, a sannyasi is not affected by eating food from anywhere and everywhere. According to the Shastras, there is no discrepancy in the sannyasi's eating at another's house. But for a householder brahmana, this kind of eating is faulty. It is not with those previous births. Family, character, and behavior are unknown. Nityananda Prabhu immediately refuted Sri Advaita Acharya, saying, "You are a teacher of impersonal monism, and the monistic conclusion is a great hindrance to progression, pure devotional service. One who participates in your impersonal monistic philosophy does not accept anything but one Brahman. Nityananda Prabhu continued, "You are such a monist, and now I am eating beside you. I do not know how my mind will be affected in this way." Thus they both went on talking and praising one another, although their praise appeared negative, for it appeared as if they were exchanging ill names. Thereafter, Calling all the Vaishnavas, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu distributed Mahaprasadam as if sprinkling nectar. At the time of the mock fighting between Advaita Acharya and Nityananda Prabhu, became more and more delicious. After taking their lunch, all the Vaishnavas stood up and chanted the holy name of Hari, and the resounding noise filled all the upper and lower planetary systems. After this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu offered flower garlands and sandalwood pulp to all his devoted personal associates. 7 persons headed by Swarup Damodar who were engaged in distributing prasadam to the others then took their meals within the room. Govinda saved some remnants of food left by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and kept them carefully. Later, one portion of those remnants was delivered to Haridas Thakur. The remnants of food left by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were later distributed among devotees who begged for them, and finally Govinda personally took the last remnants. The fully independent, Supreme Personality of Godhead performed various types of pastimes. The pastimes of washing and cleansing the Gondicha temple is but one of them. The next day marks the performance of the festivals of Nitrotsava. The great festival was the life and soul of the devotees. Everyone was unhappy for a fortnight because they could not see the deity of Lord Jagannath. Upon seeing the Lord at the festival, the devotees were very happy. On this occasion, greatly happy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took all the devotees with him and visited the Lord in the temple. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to the temple, Kashishvara walked in front, checking the crowds of people, and Govinda walked in the rear, bringing the sannyasi's pitcher filled with water. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went toward the temple, Paramananda Puri and Brahmananda Bharati walked in front of him, and his 2 sides walked Swarup Damodar and Advaita Acharya. With great eagerness, all the other devotees followed them into the temple of Lord Jagannath. Out of great eagerness to see the Lord, they all neglected the regulative principles, and just to see the Lord's face, went to the place where the food was offered. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very thirsty to see the Lord, and his eyes became like 2 bumblebees drinking honey from the lotus-like eyes of the Lord Jagannath, who is Krishna himself. The eyes of Lord Jagannath conquered the beauty of blossoming lotus flowers, and his neck was lustrous as the mirror made of sapphires. The chin of the Lord, tinged with buff color, conquered the beauty of the bandhuli flower and increased the beauty of his mind smiling, which was lustrous like waves of nectar. The luster of his beautiful face increased at every moment, and the eyes of hundreds of thousands of devotees drank its honey like bumblebees. As their eyes began to drink the nectarian honey of his lotus face, their thirst increased. Their eyes did not leave him. Thus, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees enjoyed transcendental bliss upon seeing the face of Jagannath. As usual, there were transcendental blissful symptoms in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's body. He perspired and trembled, and a constant flow of tears fell from his eyes. But the Lord checked those tears. They would not disturb to see his face of the Lord. There, looking at the face of Lord Jagannath was interrupted only when he was offered food. Afterwards, he was again looked upon his face when the food is being offered to Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He performed his kirtan. Feeling such great pleasure upon seeing the face of Lord Jagannath, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu forgot everything. The devotees, however, took him to his lunch at noontime. Knowing that the car festival would take place in the morning, all the servants of Lord Jagannath were doubling their offerings of food. I have briefly described the pastimes of the Lord in washing and cleansing the Gondicha temple. By seeing or hearing these pastimes, even sinful men can awaken their Krishna consciousness. I have briefly described the pastimes of the Lord in washing the cleansing the Gondicha temple. By seeing and hearing these pastimes, even a sinful man can awaken their Krishna consciousness. Praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishna Das, narrate Sri Caitanya Caritamrita, following in their footsteps. This is a very wonderful pastime. It really cleans the heart. It cleans the heart from all dirt. It was a thing to make bring in order. They did all sorts of these things.
Вынесли за территорию, потом саму территорию убрали. Для чего?